Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Detroit City Councilman James Tate, representing District 1. And today we want to talk about a project that's going to be taking place right here in District 1 that some of you may or may not be aware of. Uh, just to give you a little background, we have Alternative for Girls. They're partnering with Full Circle Communities to build a 45-unit affordable housing development, including a 3,500 square foot child care center that will be open to the community at the corner of Burt Road and Grand River, right here in District 1. Now, the former property was demolished in 2013 and is controlled by the Land Bank, Detroit Land Bank Authority. And now this development is on its way right here again in District 1. Joining us to discuss it are Tyler Hardy. She's a development specialist, or HRD, Housing and Revitalization Department. Thank you for joining us. We also have Carl Kunda, He's a senior project manager of Full Circle Communities Incorporated. I want to thank you for joining us as well. And someone who's not a stranger to us at all, actually a resident of District 1, Amy Good. She's the CEO of Alternative for Girls. Again, thank each and every one of you for joining us this evening. Some folks may or may not be aware of that particular area of town, but I just want to give just a little background about Alternative for Girls, because some folks may have in their minds some things that they think it's going to be at that location. We're going to give Amy an opportunity to talk about what is going to be there, but for those who are not familiar, but they've heard the name, Alternative for Girls is a Detroit-based nonprofit organization whose mission is to help homeless and high-risk young women avoid violence, unexpected pregnancy, and exploitation, and help them access the support and resources necessary to stabilize their lives. Again, you may not be familiar with Full Circle Communities, but you will be very soon. Full Circle Communities is an experienced Chicago-based nonprofit organization that develops and owns affordable housing and supportive housing in the Midwest. So just a little background about who we have with us. But starting us off will be Tyler Hardy with HRD, who will give us just a background of how do we get to the point where we are today. Tyler, take it away.
Thank you, Councilman Tate. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I wish it was in person, but we will have to make do with the Zoom call. So as the councilman said, I'm Tyler Hardy. I'm with the Housing and Revitalization Department. I work on the public-private partnerships team, where a big part of my role is to assist developers in getting through all of their, entitlement processes and taking their project from, an idea to fruition. And so just a little bit of background on this site. As the councilman mentioned, the land bank does own the site, but we marketed it in partnership with them, we being the city. We were explicitly looking for permanent supportive housing development. We got 4 proposals back and ultimately interviewed 3 teams and came to select Full Circle and Alternatives for Girls. We're extremely excited about the project program. We think it's a great project for this particular community. We brought this before you in the district, or I'm sorry, Department of Neighborhoods meeting late December, just as a really high level overview to let you know that we intended to have this meeting here today. And so for today's purposes, I think we really just want to introduce the project to you. I just want to be transparent and say that we are, really early on in the project. I think we're in the conceptual phases right now. We intend to, of course, keep everyone engaged as things progress, but we wanted to just really make sure this was on folks' radar, so no one's surprised by it. But we all know these things take time. So again, I mentioned we're in the conceptual phases, and so there's some financing that needs to be secured because this is an affordable housing development. The state only has 2 rounds a year for things like this, and we are competing with projects all across Michigan for financing. And so this can take time, and I want to be transparent about that. But again, we do intend to continue to engage the community for feedback, and we'd like to have a more focused meeting, I think, with residents that will be more directly impacted by this development in the future. And so again, we will be sure to keep you in the loop. And I think with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Carl, and we can roll into the presentation.
Yeah, I think that makes sense right now. Carl, do you have a think we were told that you have a presentation that you want to offer up.
I do. Thanks, Councilman Tate, and thanks for the introduction, Tyler. I am going to try to successfully put this presentation on now. All right. How's that, everyone?
Great, we can see it.
Okay, great. So as Tyler said, I am Carl Kunda. I'm a senior project manager at Full Circle Communities. I'll give a really quick overview of who Full Circle is. We are a nonprofit 501c3 developer, manager, and owner of affordable housing in the Midwest. We work in 3 states, Illinois, Iowa, and Michigan, though our headquarters is in the city of Chicago. We've existed as an organization since 1999 and have just over 1,100 units of affordable housing placed in service. With, I think, including this project, about another 185 in our pipeline for the next 2 years. Full Circle has a fairly innovative development model. So for every dollar that we earn to do developments, we return 75 cents back into providing services to tenants of those buildings. So that can mean a lot of different things based on the type of project. We do lots of types of affordable housing, from senior developments where we have programming to, create socialization opportunities, or to bring in outside groups to, to do entertainment, or in the era of COVID, helping seniors deal with isolation and allowing them to safely kind of connect with other folks. At family properties, we have a lot of programming around sort of youth outreach, so providing after school supports or summer programming or career readiness for parents. And then for permanent supportive housing, that 75-cent commitment goes towards providing sort of comprehensive services that can address the needs of folks wherever they're coming in to one of our projects. The origin of this project actually goes way back to 2015. When Full Circles first came to the city of Detroit to explore sort of what opportunities there might be for us to do development in the city. And another unique thing about Full Circle is, so I'd mentioned that we are a developer, owner, and manager of affordable housing, and we spend a lot of money on providing services. We actually don't provide services ourselves. So what we do is a lot of research in communities, one, to identify what the housing needs are, and then also identify service providers like Alternatives for Girls, who are doing a lot of great work and have a need for housing for the folks that they're working for. So back in 2015, it was kind of being at the right place at the right time. We wanted to expand into the city of Detroit, and AFG was working with a local foundation, the McGregor Foundation, around identifying what would be the best path forward to create affordable housing that might be available to folks that they were serving. As Tyler mentioned, these things take a lot of time. So since 2015, we have been working with the state funders, with the city, to identify sites that could work for a project of this type, and then just trying to get the background, so the programming that we hope to offer, what types of amenities might make sense, and if we're going to be doing housing and childcare, how do we do that? So flash forward to 2021, we are finally ready to start applying for the different types of funding sources to make this project a reality. So as Tyler mentioned, we're still in the conceptual phase. What we mean by that is that essentially no money has been committed to the project. We are going to be looking for competitive sources to do just over 90% of the project's financing, and those are administered and allocated by various public agencies. One of them is at the state level. It's called the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, or MISTA. We're also looking for funding from the city of Detroit, and then through the Federal Home Loan Bank system, they operate a grant program that we'll be looking to go for as well. The project that we're talking about today is located at the just off of Grand River Ave at Burt Road. You can see kind of this orange shape highlighted there. It's a parcel that's currently owned by the Detroit Land Bank Authority and has been vacant for quite some time, but it's in a really prime location, as all of you know, being just down the street from that large Meijer. Lots of businesses and schools in the area, and then also good transit access both on Grand River and then at McNichols.
Hey, Carl, I think we're on a different slide than
Oh.
you, so I'm not sure if you're showing the bird slide. We're still on the first slide.
Huh. How about this? Did that work?
Yep, there we go.
Sorry, everybody, I am not the best at Zoom presentations. So this was the one where I was talking about the orange shape, so you have kind of an overhead view of where the project's going to be in District 1. And then we also have some conceptual building images to share. And I say conceptual because one of the major hurdles for this project is to get the approval of the city that what we're proposing makes sense for this area and is made of quality materials and meets the city's vision for long-term investment in the neighborhoods. We've decided to call the project the AFG, obviously after our wonderful service provider, and then Miller Grove Center because of its location in the Miller Grove neighborhood, and also to convey the idea that we're not just doing a residential building, but it is going to be mixed use because we are going to have a child care center on the ground floor. The project is going to be just over $15 million. We're hoping to create 45 affordable units, 36 one-bedrooms, 7 two-bedrooms, and 2 three-bedrooms. Units will be affordable to folks earning between 30 and 50% of area median income. For sort of more lived-in numbers, I have an affordability slide here to share what that means. So for a one-person household, that would be at the upper level, somebody that earns no more than $27,500. For a two-person household, the upper limit would be $31,400, and for a three-person household, $35,350. And then next to that, you sort of see the range of affordability on rental rates that those units will be rented at. Amy is going to share a little bit more about who AFG is, but the project was really born out of the need for needing permanent supportive housing solutions for youth in the city of Detroit. As some of you may know, the Detroit youth homelessness is one of the highest in the country, and there are very few resources to pair youth with long-term housing solutions to hopefully break the cycle and allow them to eventually, attain independent living so that they can move out on their own into, just sort of standard apartments or even home ownership. To help achieve that, we have various building amenities that will be part of this development besides just apartments. So there will be an office for a full-time property manager who will be there 40 hours a week. We also have 2 offices that will be dedicated to case managers from Alternatives for Girls, which will also be full-time positions. There'll be some sort of amenity spaces like a community room, shared kitchen, as well as places for sort of group programming. So for example, if we were to have somebody come in and do kind of a career fair, we have kind of a flexible multi-purpose room where events like that could take place. As you can see, it's a 3-story building. We have a mix of materials, so that's going to be masonry, and then also a high quality fiber cement project for the colored areas. I don't have a slide at the back, but that's where all of the parking spaces are going to be. So all of the parking for the building will be off street. And then there's some landscaping elements at the front of the building, as well as some outdoor amenity space. One will be dedicated to residents. And then we also have a 2,500 square foot outdoor space that includes a playground, which will be reserved for children that access the child care center. In terms of next steps, we've put in an application for state financing in February. If everything goes to plan, we should be hearing back from them sometime over the summer that's moving forward. Around that time, we should also be hearing back from the city of Detroit if they're able to help support this project to move forward on the financial side. And then the grant should be coming in sometime in the fall. So we would then be working towards a closing and construction start in the springtime of 2022. Because it's such a large project and fairly complex, it'll probably be over a 1-year construction period. So, under the most aggressive scenario, we would not be opening the building until the summer of 2023. Right now, the plan is to complete the residential components and the child care center on the same schedule. So at the same time that folks will hopefully be moving into their apartments, we'll also be advertising for the child care center to open as well. So that's kind of the project concept in a nutshell. I do have a question slide, but I'm going to turn it over for now for Amy to give an overview of AFG and the good work that they're doing.
We absolutely want to make sure we have an opportunity for Amy to speak on AFG, but we want to make sure that we alert the folks who are watching today. This is not just a presentation, this is engagement as well and outreach. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to engage. So after Amy does give her remarks regarding AFG, we're going to open it up for everyone to, again, engage us. So if you're calling by telephone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9, and we'll get to you that way. If you have a question and you're on Zoom on your computer, if you have a Windows computer, you will type in Alt+Y, we'll get you in. If you're on an Apple's computer, it's Option+Y. Again, if you're on the telephone, it's *9. If you're on a Windows computer, it's Alt+Y. If you're on an Apple's computer, it is Option+Y. Feel free to raise your hand now. We will come to you again after Ms. Good gives her presentation. Thank you again, Amy, for being patient.
Sure. Can people hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much, Councilmember Tate, for hosting this presentation this evening, and to your awesome team. The organizing, setting this up was kind of really something to behold. And thank you, Carl and Tyler and everybody, and all the community members, all my neighbors who are here. I'm going to do a brief presentation, just kind of introduction to Alternatives for Girls. As Tyler said and others, council members said, we will be doing subsequent meetings with a series of additional discussions. So this is a brief overview about Alternatives for Girls. So Alternatives for Girls, or AFG, we are a Detroit nonprofit. We serve the entire city. I'm the CEO. As Councilmember Tate said, I live in District 1, and I've lived in District 1 for 25 years. I've actually been a Detroiter for 39 years. I had to stop and look back. A long time. Alternatives for Girls is 33 years old, 33 and a half years old. We were started by a group of neighbors. I was among them in response to the lack of services available to girls and young women who needed support that wasn't otherwise available to them in a number of different ways. We grew from a volunteer-run project operating really without money, just on the basis of community members who we were just identifying the need and responding to it. We grew to a mid-sized nonprofit, all in response to the needs of Detroit girls and young women and their families. We are a solid nonprofit. We're really, really proud that we were named the Detroit's best managed nonprofit by Cranes 3 years ago. And that's for a number of reasons, primarily because we are really frugal and careful with our planning, and we make long-term plans and back them up with resources and partners, and we show results. The core groups that we work with, we work with young people who've encountered some type of hardship that in many cases has led to homelessness. And there's a number of different circumstances that can put a young woman on that path, a young man. We address those situations with a range of different types of interventions, outreach and housing. We connect with the young people and their families. We have people, caseworkers and others trained to understand what the individual challenges are that are getting in the way of safety and stability and education and employment and connecting to family and to community. Help with everything ranging from needing a safe place to stay to needing a way to get to a doctor's appointment, getting education back on track, connecting with skills, training, employment, childcare. So just a range of different needs, and we assess them, address them, and always it's the young people that we work with that do the heavy lifting. We're there to support them. And I mean, some of them have children of their own, and in those cases we teach and support parenting skills. For the young people, we do a lot of parenting ourselves. A young person, young adult, a teenager typically needs parenting and family support. And sometimes it's not available to them for various reasons. And we can kind of fill in the gaps while rebuilding connections with their families. Sometimes they need housing solutions, temporary or long-term. And that's really the gist of this project. One of the problems that those that we serve have faced is that a lot of the services, the housing services in particular, are temporary. And there can be a lot of difficulties in finding not necessarily permanent housing in the strict sense of that word, but longer term housing. Young people are going to want to become homeowners and engage with the community in the long run. But sometimes they need a medium term or longer term supportive solution. So we need to help them, those who are leaving our other housing options, help them find something that allows them to be independent and yet have access to services. So we need to connect them. That's what this project is about, helping to connect them with affordable apartments, with independence that are subsidized and yet affordable for them, but also have people in the building who can be a resource to them to help them with whatever comes up. So some of the types of services that we plan to include education and employment support, casework services to help with all kinds of things that I've mentioned, career readiness, transportation, health and wellness of all kinds. And then, of course, the on-site childcare. As the council member said, it's 3,400 square feet. A lot of the details of the childcare space have not been settled. And in fact, we are really interested in feedback from the community to kind of hone in on the childcare needs. We have not provided childcare for infants and children in daycare in the past, but we are working with high quality, lots of experienced childcare providers to help us create the space and create the programming, those who are licensed and have lots of practice. So lots of details to be worked out with that space, and we look forward to input from the community so that we can do a good job of addressing those needs. And we'll be collecting neighborhood feedback. So that's just a short overview, lots more to say, and we'll have subsequent opportunities to say it. But for now, I'll stop and turn it back over to Councilmember Tate.
All right, thank you. And we appreciate that. And we absolutely, we do have a few questions, but I want to start it off and ask Tyler. First question. I know that you all in HRD get a number of proposals that come before you. What was it about, what we have here with Full Circle Communities and Alternative for Girls? What was it about this project, this partnership that made HRD feel that this was a project that was worthy for the city to engage in?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think that just in terms of overall project presentation, I think we were really impressed with the thought and careful consideration of the community and the community needs. I think that was something that really stuck out for us with this particular proposal. You know, Alternatives for Girls and Full Circle provided a lot of data on the childcare gap in this area, and we're very intentional about fulfilling that need and potentially opening some of their services to members of the community. Really like the design. And again, I think just overall, the team cohesion, I think was extremely strong. So we received some proposals that didn't have the services side as fleshed out. And so I think we were able to feel extremely confident in this team. And also given that, you know, Full Circle is in the midst of breaking ground on another project on the other side of the city, definitely felt like it was a trustworthy partner with it's well-intentioned.
Awesome. And last thing I'm going to ask, and then we're going to open it up to the community. Carl, I heard you say, you know, potentially best case scenario, opening up 2023. I think you said the summer of 2023. That's best case scenario. Let's say, you know, and Tyler, you gave us, you dropped some breadcrumbs to say, hey, you know what? It may take some time. I want to let you know. Is there a time, a deadline for this particular project to actually be open and operational? Is there some funding challenges that would, you know, create a deadline? Is it just the service itself? Is there a timeline that is absolute? It has to be done by this particular time. Tyler, I'll go to you.
So I guess the short answer is no. I don't know that we can give you an exact time. It looks like Carl fell off, so I'll do my best.
Yeah, I was going to go to Carl, but I saw just like in there.
So I wanted to really kind of manage expectations early on, because I know we've gotten in front of the community and presented some projects, and people feel as though they're not really going to happen, or, you know, why did you tell us about this now if we have to wait 2 years for it? You know, I think we wanted to get out kind of early, manage expectations, make sure nobody is surprised by it later, because we are going to start seeking, you know, different city approvals. I know they're going to need to go before the BZA for setback variance and things like that. So we didn't want anybody to be caught off guard. You know, as I mentioned, they're going for some MISHDA's, you know, state tax credits. And so they only open, you know, 2 rounds a year. And as I mentioned, you know, we're competing with other projects around the state. I think, you know, Full Circle is committed to continuing to apply to rounds, you know, say in the worst case scenario that they weren't awarded the project. They are going to continue to push for funding. And so, I mean, if I had to throw a date out there, maybe worst case scenario, it takes 1.5 years, 2 years to get financing. But again, we are committed to keep pushing. So.
All right. Well, so now gives us a chance to open up the lines for questions from the community. And Yelena Ramator, who do we have as our first person asking a question this evening?
Good evening, Councilman and guests. We have Reverend Bouye, who has her hand up first.
Reverend Ross, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Councilmember Tate. Good to see you all. Thank you. I just have, I see Carl is left and my question was going to him, so I guess it'd have to go to Tyler at this point. I wanted to ask how much TIF money or brownfield money is going into this project. And I know he said that the project cost was 15 million. I wanted to ask him, was that the total cost? Because that seems kind of low for this project, for the total completion of this project. So that was my question with him. And Amy Good, congratulations, great work. I wanted to acknowledge that. I wanted to ask you, were the restrictions for the young ladies that you'll be housing? I know recently we've tried to put some folks into Peterborough Arms and falling into that gap that's there with LIHTC, right, with HUD money. And so if you have felony convictions, they're not taking folks into that shelter. Yeah, so I was wondering, do you have any constraints that will be applicable to the young ladies? Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Tyler, do you want to respond to the first question and then I'll respond to the second?
Yeah, I think my response is quicker. There's no brownfield TIF included in this project. So they will be going, like I said, for low-income housing tax credits from the state and some additional home funding from the city, and then philanthropic dollars and some other sources, but no TIF. And the $15 million, I think I think it's reasonable. It could be higher, you know, if construction prices change along the way. But I think it's a reasonable ballpark.
Amy?
Sure, thanks for the question. Two things I'll say. One is that with HUD funding through MISTA, in this case, there's no discrimination, even on the basis of gender or age. You know, we're designing the project to address the needs of those that we are serving. But we do have to be open and prepared for serving those outside of our target population. So we are not even restricting on the basis of age or gender. We have, and with regard to your question about felony convictions, I have to say, we don't know. I don't know. We have not talked about that restriction or other restrictions. I don't want to make a guess one way or another. That's getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. But I hear your question, and we will put it on our agenda to talk about and come back the next time with at least a status of that question.
Okay, thank you. Yelena, who do we have next?
Next, we have Tommy.
All right, and I just want to let everyone know that Carl is trying to get back on, so he's having some computer issues right now. But Tommy, thank you for joining us, Tommy. Oh, Tommy Obigoha. What's your question, sir?
Good evening, everybody. I think I have 3 questions, Councilman Tate.
Yes, sir.
The first is directed to Amy because this site is close to my heart. I went to school across the street at Christ the King. So I want to know, how does this development plan to interact with Christ the King, the Artist Village, and other cultural institutions in the neighborhood?
Great question, Tommy. Thank you. We are very excited about, first of all, being close to Christ the King. We've talked to some folks who are involved with Christ the King. Well, let me just back up and say this. This is our philosophy at Alternatives to Girls. An engaged young person grows to be an engaged adult, and engaged adults make for thriving communities. Our plans and our hopes and what we teach the young people that we work with from day one is that our goal for them, our vision for them, is for them to become engaged in the neighborhood where they move to when they leave our shelter or transition to independent living program or other housing components. We want them to set down roots and build community around them. And there are so many, I mean, I know from living in the neighborhood, there are so many strong neighborhood institutions in our district. So being across the street from Christ the King is a great plus, a great asset, and we encourage them to reach out and build community, including with faith communities, with the, you know, with the library and just all the community institutions in the neighborhood. So we will be working actively, directly partnering with Christ the King.
And I had 2 more, either Tyler or Councilman Tate. One is regarding the 50% AMI that the developer talked about, and how I believe that Detroit City Council just passed a Detroit specific AMI resolution. Is that right?
Yes.
So could that 50% AMI be adjusted for that new resolution to be 50% of just Detroit and not the other metropolitan areas? And then the second question is, with the passage of Proposal N and the deconstruction pilots within Proposal N, is there room for reclaimed materials, let's say from Brightmoor, to be used in this development?
So I guess, Tyler, I don't know if you're familiar with the what we came up with in terms of the affordable housing and what we use in terms of the affordable rate. But what we did was we took out, when you start factoring in Livonia, Warren into Detroit's numbers, of course, what they make and what they have in terms of their dollar amount is higher than the city of Detroit. And so what we did was we moved out those other jurisdictions and simply looked at the city of Detroit to come up with our affordable housing guideline number. So just wanted to kind of put that out there. And again, for the folks who are not aware of what Tommy may have been referencing. So Tyler, I think you were about to respond to the question.
I was, so I want to make sure I understand the first question. You're Tommy asking if the 50% AMI can be adjusted to the new figure?
Yes.
And okay. I truthfully don't know that I'm the best person to answer that, just based on, I don't know what the restrictions are with the, the state application. I wish Carl were here. So I think we might have to get back to you on that one. I also think he's probably the best person to answer as far as materials and stuff go as well, unfortunately.
Carl is here, actually. He's
Okay.
on the phone, so I just unmuted him.
Okay.
Hey, Carl, are you
Hi,
there?
everyone. Yeah, hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Do you
I
need
apologize.
Oh, that's not a problem.
Apologize for the technical difficulties. I did hear the question on 50% AMI, so I can respond to that.
Yeah, please do.
All right. So I think this is a great question. And I think it's really important that cities like Detroit are trying to change these measures of need, because in many ways they don't make sense. When you have communities that are so different in the Detroit metro area, it really can be limiting to use that benchmark in the city. Unfortunately, the program that funds this isn't nuanced enough to take that into account. So it is going to have to be the metro area, because that's what the state uses, and that's what the National Tax Credit Program relies on. I would say we do have maybe two factors in our favor, however. One, there are very few 50% AMI units at this project. Of 45, there's only 12 that are set to those 50% rents. And when we say a 50% unit, that's the maximum that you can earn for those units. So you can certainly earn less than that. And I think Full Circle and Alternative Circles are both committed to finding additional resources to help folks be able to afford these units.
All right, Tommy, are you still there?
Yep. And then I think my other question was, with the passage of Proposal Anna, if you're familiar, there's going to be some demolition in the neighborhood, primarily centered in Brightmoor, an adjacent community. So like, how can we adaptively reuse some of these materials from these demolitions to be able to contribute to this site?
Carl, I think that one's for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk about this more, honestly, because I'm interested in what types of materials might be available. So I guess I can't answer that now, but this sounds like a great opportunity maybe to talk more, in case there is sort of a synergy between what's going on through that proposal and this project.
And we're definitely going to have additional conversations as you start to see this project come more into fruition. Tommy, is that your last question, sir?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you all.
All right, thank you as well. Aisha, I think we have a question on Facebook.
Yes, we have one question on Facebook. Celeste Mintag asked, will the cost of utilities and childcare be included in the rent?
This is a great question. So the cost of utilities is included in the rent. So the owner pays for all utilities at this project. So that's, water, sewer, electricity, heating, cooling. We're also committing to providing free Wi-Fi to all the tenants as well. In terms of the childcare, that's an interesting one. And when Amy said, we're still kind of working through what that programming is going to look like, obviously our key interest here is to make childcare as free or as affordable to folks as possible. So we're looking for ways to minimize, one, the cost of building that space out, so we don't have to borrow money and then pay debt service on it, but then also looking for additional resources, including some grants for childcare that might help make that more accessible both for our tenants and for the community.
All right, Elena, we're coming up to you next. Who do we have next on Zoom?
Okay, so we have a few more questions. We have Trisha DeMarco.
Trisha DeMarco, thank you for joining us. You have a question?
Yeah, thank
Panel?
you guys. So I'm just curious, knowing that the state of Michigan has just made a significant investment in the Grand River Corridor, how this project plans to interface with Grand River and engage and bring vitality to the streetscape that is really working to incorporate the cycle track and the alternative modes of transportation that are available there. And then also curious if the design team has already been selected for the project.
So we got a couple of questions. How is the project going to really integrate and bring some excitement and vitality into the Grand River Corridor, which we're really pushing for and doing our best to try to make happen? Amy, any response to that?
I think I'll let Carl at least start.
Okay, Carl?
Yeah, I think this is a great question too. So, I mean, this is a great site, and I think we wish we were a little bit closer to Grand River because, you know, there's some exciting opportunities that would be available there. So I think, you know, if we do eventually become a new neighbor, we are going to be very invested on kind of what happens on the main corridor itself. In terms of the design of the parcel that we do control, the city has very high design standards. That was also part of their community visioning and planning process. But they are making sure that on the public-facing side of this project, there's a lot of landscaping so that it really doesn't feel like, you know, maybe affordable housing of the past where it's kind of fenced in and really feels isolated from the community. There's sort of design elements that hopefully create integration between tenants and then the surrounding community. And then also just kind of activating this long vacant parcel. On the back of the site, there's obviously some outdoor space that we're prioritizing, particularly in light of everything that we know now due to COVID. So that'll hopefully be an amenity for the neighborhood as well. In terms of transportation resources, I think we're interested in making sure that, you know, the bus stops are safe, you know, that you can cross the street if that's the direction you're going into. The project itself will have you know, ample bike parking. So those are the things that we like to look for.
Thank you. Yelena, who's our next call?
We have Pilsen Construction.
Pilsen Construction, good evening. Thank you for joining us. You have a question for the panel?
Yes, thank you guys. Hi, everybody. My name is Tiffany Pilsen and I have 3 questions. I'm not sure who to address them to.
Okay.
The first one is, has this group, AFG, HRD, or Full Circle, considered reusing one of the beautiful vacant schools, Detroit Public School buildings in District 1, such as the Peter Vitale building, and remodel it like the Jefferson Oaks projects, like they did an old school in Oak Park for apartments? Should I ask all 3 of my questions at the same time?
Well, let's answer that one first. So, you know, I guess for the development team or Tyler, whoever can answer that, you know, why a completely new build as opposed to utilizing one of the structures that are definitely in desperate need of being redeveloped within our neighborhood already?
Yeah, I think I can go ahead and answer that one. So it's definitely HRD's priority to get some of the vacant schools addressed. You know, those are actually pretty challenging to complete. I think we selected this specific site in partnership with, we have a homelessness solutions division within our department. And they came up with a list of sites that would score well in terms of walkability. So I mentioned earlier, it being a competitive process with the state in order to get financing. One of the categories on the scoring sheet is walkability. It's also, you know, how much recent and future investment is happening in the area. So we selected this specific site, just given all of the, you know, recent and upcoming construction. You know, someone mentioned the streetscape, all of those investments coupled with a strong walk score. We felt like this site was one of the few in the city or the land bank's inventory that could score well for a project like this.
Ms. Pilsen?
Yes, okay. And so my second question was, there are a lot of citizens in District 1 now that has been able to buy up a lot of the vacant lots in that area. Have any of you guys considered partnering up with any of the residents to perhaps develop some projects maybe directly in the neighborhood for affordable housing for some of the homeless youth in your AGF program or Alternative for Girls? I'm sorry.
I can respond. I'm going to see if Carl wants to start.
I guess, without knowing kind of the specific ideas on, places where that might make sense, there's a lot of constraints around the funding sources that we use. And I think one of the most important constraints is really the size of a project. One of the reasons why we arrived at 45 units, first and foremost, it's based on the need that we're seeing in Detroit, but there's also some practical considerations around, how big of a project, what scale do we need to be able to have a full-time property manager, because we know that that's a best practice for this type of housing. And it leads both to better outcomes for our tenants and also is just better for the neighborhood. In terms of some of the other barriers, I think, to working with smaller or neighborhood-based groups is there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through on the compliance side. So sometimes that can be a real limiting factor to being able to work with folks that haven't done this type of housing in the past.
And if I could just jump in, I will add that I think it's definitely, the housing department's priority to, get some of these vacant lots activated. I think we're, actively engaging the community and looking for ways to use community members in sort of smaller scale development teams for smaller scale infill projects. But again, on this specific site, I think we were looking for a very specific use that would require, very specific experience. And so that's why we ultimately selected this team.
I would add just one point, that because, as we've talked about, we don't know for sure what the timeline is going to be. We've applied for funding. We hope we'll be successful in this round. If not, we'll have to apply it in the next round, 6 months later or so. So we're really fortunate to have the city as a partner, as a patient owner of this land and partner with us. So we don't have to worry about the property being going to a better offer while we go through the rounds of funding that we need.
All right.
Thank you. My third question was answered in 1 and 2. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I did see when the team sent me something. So has the design team have they been identified yet at this point?
So if we're talking about the architect, yes, we are working with, we already have an architect selected for the project.
Okay. And I know that was a question from Tricia earlier. All right, let's go to Facebook. And Aisha, who do we have on Facebook? What's that question?
Similar to the question that you just asked, Exodus Up asked, are there any RFP or avenues available for local D1 contractors that are looking to participate in the construction phase?
Yeah, and I think that's an extremely important question, and that's maybe where Tricia was going. What locally in our area, what type of engagement are we having with potential designers and, fill in the blank? What does that look like? And Amy, you live in the neighborhood, so I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart. So
Absolutely.
Let's kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yes. Yes. It is near and dear to my heart, and it's also under Carl's arena of this project. So I'll let Carl talk.
Yeah, so as a mission-driven nonprofit developer, obviously we care about kind of the impact that our project makes for our tenant. But when we're talking about a $15 million investment, which is probably going to have a $10 million hard cost, that's a lot of money that can go to local contractors. So the state and city recognize that. So they create incentives and sometimes obligations that we have to hit certain targets with local contractors and minority or women-owned contractors to make sure that, opportunities like this where there is public investment is going to help level the playing field. So in terms of, a formal RFP, we're way too early in the process to be able to, specify the timing on that. But once we have our project financing committed, the general contractor starts very early in terms of communicating these opportunities out to make sure that we are meeting those goals. I think this is a really great thing to start talking about now, so that we can start talking about sort of the various compliance requirements and the paperwork that unfortunately comes along with projects of this type. The state and city, in exchange for using their resources, there's a lot of boxes that we have to check and a lot of hoops that we have to go through. But I think we are a very willing partner to work with local organizations to try and do that work together.
And Tyler, if you can just kind of add to that, what kind of incentive or push do you have and your team from HRD to ensure that that takes place?
Yeah, I think that certainly, and Councilman, you asked a question earlier about what made us ultimately select this team. I think that was one of the highlights for this particular proposal too. They mentioned on their own their intention behind local hiring and local participation. So we're excited about that. We definitely explicitly stated our stance on local hiring and things like that. And so they scored well in that particular category. That was a category as part of our scoring criteria. It can also be something, so it's a development agreement with the land bank because it's their land, but we may be able to work out something in terms of a term sheet or something like that to ensure local participation.
All right. Elena, who do we have next?
We have Ms. Tamara Grice.
Ms. Tamara Grice, thank you for joining us. You have a question for the panel?
Yes, I was wondering if there were any educational, like early childhood educational supports or programming that will be available for young ladies that move into this facility other than having a child care center in the building, but things to like, parenting classes and things of that nature. And if there were guest organizations that would like provide services, would that be something that would be open?
Yes, in fact, it's something that we do now in our shelter and our housing components that we have now. A number of the young women have children of their own. And we not only provide, we do a whole range of things, and we intend to continue to providing that support to those that we're serving in this building. We provide parenting classes, mentoring and coaching. We have a staff person whose focus is making sure that that there's prenatal care, that there's good parenting education. We partner with a number of organizations around the city that promote breastfeeding and other parenting skills. And we'll continue those types of supports for those who live in this building and those who access the daycare as well.
Will these supports be on site?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elena, who do we have next?
We have Ms. Ernestine Perkins.
Ms. Ernestine Perkins, thank you for joining us. You have a question for the panel?
Yes, I just want to piggyback on the child care, the 3,400 square feet. I can't imagine that, but I'm sure it's large. My first question is, what age, as far as the kids? Are you saying 0 to 5 or 0 to 8 for the child care? Is someone going to answer that question? Can we answer that?
Sure. I was just going to say that's something that we have not nailed down.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
we've done enough research to make it clear that there is a need for daycare in the neighborhood. But we want to solicit additional community input to narrow down and prioritize the age range that we need to serve. The space allows us some flexibility.
Okay, so are we saying that it will also be open to the public or to the community? And not
Yes,
just only the residents there?
yes.
Okay. And my last question, okay, I got two more. What would be the time? Have you thought about the time? This is going to be 24 hours, 6 to 6.
You're talking about the childcare, correct?
Child care. I'm talking about child care because we have to remember also that some of our parents, they work 24 hours. You know, you might have a morning shift or afternoon shift, midnight shift, or what. And then, okay, have you thought about that, Amy? I'm sorry.
Yes. No, I was just going to say thank you for asking that because I meant to mention that and I neglected to. Yeah, that is definitely our intention. I mean, what you're describing is definitely true for those we serve and those we intend to serve. And it is definitely it's part of, it's on the table. We haven't, I don't want to commit because we haven't made any decisions around the daycare, but it's definitely on our list to consider accommodating a range of schedules because that's the reality of the types of jobs that young parents hold all over the map in terms of, shifts.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you, Amy. But one last question. The 3,400 square feet, how many classrooms can you get in there?
It depends. I don't know. I'm sorry to have to come back to that again. It hasn't been determined yet because it's not a straightforward answer because classrooms can be different sizes depending on how many children and of what age. The space parameters, space requirements are different. It sounds like you have familiarity and you probably know that. They're different for different ages. So we need to nail down the age range that will serve and the numbers. And then at that point, we can identify how the space will be divvied up.
Okay.
So we'll, make sure and participate in those conversations going forward.
Yes, I just wanted to jump in and thank you for those questions, Ms. Perkins, because it sounds like we've got 2 items to make sure we cover once we start, garnering some more community feedback, just in terms of open and close times, and then the age range of the children looking to serve. So we will have that on our radar, and I appreciate you asking those questions.
Yeah. Yelena, who do we have next?
Actually, we have Tommy has another question.
All right. That's why we're here, to get questions answered. Tommy, what's your question, sir?
I'm sorry, everybody.
No need to apologize.
I just wanted to know, is there room in this development for perhaps like a multi-purpose community room that community groups, block clubs, etc. can utilize? Is there room for anything like that, a community garden to be instituted into the development? Like, how can we marry, we want to always leverage, as the community, we want to always leverage developments that are coming into our area. And so, like, how can this be as useful as it can be to, area block clubs, long-term residents who have lived in the neighborhood?
Yeah, this is a great question. I'm going to say maybe. I think what we're always trying to do is balance, the security concerns of our tenants with trying to integrate them with the broader community. And it can be a balancing act. So there is a multi-purpose and community room. There is space for resident outdoor space. So, that could be a community gardening initiative. So I'd say, this would be great to kind of have an ongoing conversation around so that we can see if it really is going to be feasible. One of our goals, so we are working in the Piety Hill neighborhood. One of the early steps for that was that all of the project team, we joined for our street to be part of that block club. And that rolled up to kind of the neighborhood wide where all the block clubs meet together. So I imagine something similar is what we'd like to do here. And I think, if block club meetings are rotating through the community, it seems very achievable.
Hey, Carl, your audio just dropped a little bit. I don't know if you need to get a little closer to the receiver.
How's this?
Much better.
Good.
I was just going to finish up and say I think there is a there where we can work with community groups to be able to offer free space for, neighborhood type meetings.
And hasn't there been some interaction and engagement with Miller Grove already? I read something that indicated there was some kind of engagement.
We are working with Carla to try and get in front of some of the neighborhood groups to be able to do a more focused presentation. Again, as Amy said, it's the first of many conversations, and I think a big district-wide meeting like this is great, but doing some smaller, more intimate meetings is definitely on our radar as well.
Got it. All right, Tommy, did that answer your question?
Yes, and Carl, I would love to be a conduit to make some of those conversations happen between communities.
Yeah, we definitely
Absolutely, and I know
Thank you.
District 1 has my contact information, so happy to share that with anybody on the call that wants it.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure that the information for Carl and Amy is placed on the screen at the end of this program. So, one question that hasn't been asked, and I know, Tyler, you mentioned this, and I'm not as familiar with full circle communities either. So this is an education for me as well. What other project? You mentioned there's other project on the east side, I believe, that they're working on, or another part of the town you said. What's that project, and where can folks go and just drive by and see, hey, this is what Full Circle does?
Yeah, it's I do want to call it the east side, more like central region. I think it's in District 5. I think Carl can give you a little bit more information, but they're the developer for the Ruth Ellis Center.
Okay. Carl, you want to talk just a little bit about that project?
Yeah, sure. So we actually broke ground in November. So right now, unfortunately, it's just a big muddy pit where they're trying to put the foundation in for a project. But it's actually another youth project in partnership with another great nonprofit called the Ruth Ellis Center, which is going to create 43 units of affordable housing. It's also mixed use. On the ground floor, it has a couple of different things. It has a health clinic. It has some nonprofit office space for the Ruth Ellis Center. And then it has a cafe, which is not just a cafe. We're not looking to get like a national chain in there. It's really a career training center for youth to be able to learn some of the culinary arts. And then we'll also be able to open it at certain times to offer, stuff to the neighborhood. So if you want to drive by it, like I said, we're not quite out of the ground yet. It's right at Claremont and Woodward. It's less than half a block off of Woodward Avenue there in Piety Hill, or some folks just call it North End.
All right.
And that project should be completed, if you can believe this. So we broke ground in November. It's not going to be open until probably late spring or early summer of 2022.
Got it. All right. Yelena, who do we have next?
We have Reverend Bouye. She has an additional question.
Reverend Ross.
Hey, thank you. So Councilmember Tate, that was going to be my question to Carl. I wanted to, since he's back on the call, I wanted to ask him exactly what you did. How many, I know he had mentioned there were other projects that the Full Circle is doing in the city. So you're saying one of them is the Ruth Ellis Center. Is that the only project that you have that you're doing right now, Carl, with your development group? And can you talk more about the cost? Not with Ruth Ellis, but the cost, if you can share more, Carl, about the cost with the housing for the young ladies, since you're back on the call. Originally, when you got up, before you were dropped from the Zoom meeting, I wanted to ask you, and Tyler graciously answered, where your funding was coming from, if you were getting some funding from TIF monies or Brownsfield money, and she said no. And I know she shared that it would be coming from state, local, and philanthropic monies, but I want to ask you more about the funding, Carl, that your company normally gets and whatnot. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take the
Thank
first
you.
part of your question first. In terms of, do we have anything else going on in the Detroit metro area? The answer is no. So Ruth Ellis is our first project in the city of Detroit. We started that one also back in 2015. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how long it takes to do developments of these types. We are working on the western side of the state. So we have 4 projects in the Kalamazoo area that are open and operating, and then a number of projects here in Illinois and also in Iowa. So I don't know, it's obviously pretty far to go check that out, but happy to, maybe share more information virtually, or if anybody was going to be in the area of one of our projects, happy to set up a tour if there's interest. Related to the costs, yeah, so in terms of the sources that we're looking for, I think I mentioned in my initial presentation, the majority of the funding is actually coming from a state program from MISTA, which is probably going to be upwards of, I want to say 85% or 90% of the project's costs. We're looking for a little bit of money from the city of Detroit. And then we're looking at a grant from the Federal Home Loan Bank system. In this case, it's actually the Federal Home Loan Bank of Atlanta, which would contribute a small amount to the project as well. The site itself is not a brownfield, so we're not looking for brownfield funds, and we're not looking for any kind of TIF assistance.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you. That's what I wanted to know. The project that you said that you started, the Ruth Ellis project started in 2015. You said that you should have it up and running by 2022. Where did those monies come from?
It's very similar to what we're talking about
Same
here.
ones?
So,
okay.
Yeah, so the bulk of it is coming from the state. So MISTA, the city was, we're very grateful that the city of Detroit reviewed our application favorably and is committing $1 million towards that project. It's a little bit larger than what we're proposing here. That's almost $18 million project. And then we also have some grant sources for that project as well. So a Federal Home Loan Bank of Atlanta gave us some money. The Kresge Foundation has come to the table, as well as the Gregor Foundation.
Okay, thank you so kindly.
Absolutely.
Thank you, council member.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are we are actually over our time that we had committed with the presenters, but we want to make sure we have all the questions that we can get answered this evening. But keep in mind, this is still very, very, very preliminary, and we're going to have multiple conversations after today. This is just the beginning. And so, Yelena, I believe you indicated that we have, what, 2 more hands raised?
Yes, we have someone that just raised their hand, ending in 146.
So we have two hands raised, and how many questions? Do we have any questions in chat or on Facebook?
We do have a couple of questions in chat, and we have 3 hands currently raised.
So we're going to take those 3 hands, and we're going to ask the questions in chat. And then I believe we don't have any questions on Facebook, Aisha?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to take those 3 hands. We're going to answer those questions, and then we'll again be very respectful of everyone's time. And again, we will definitely have additional conversations after today, but we'll wrap up this event after those questions. So Yelena, you take it away from there. Who do we have next?
Okay, number ending in 146.
Number ending in
Hi, hello?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, this is Minnie Davis. I just wanted to ask, is there a website that we can go to look at maybe some of the past work you've done, even in Iowa or Kalamazoo or something like that, to see what it looks like completed, a project?
Absolutely. So I think I heard that my contact information is going to be shared. We can also obviously share the Full Circle website, and we do have quite a few pictures of our existing projects, both the outside and also the inside, so that you can see the way that the properties are finished on the inside, because we don't just care about the exterior, we also really prioritize quality materials on the inside.
Yeah, I don't know if we have the website on the slide with the contact. Carl, what's your website for folks who want to go and take a look at it?
It's a little bit hard for me to say without spelling it out. So Tyler, you have our website. I don't know if we could maybe type it into the chat box.
I
wish it was just Full Circle community. You don't have access. Oh,
just go ahead and say it. And this is the world we live in now.
Right.
We'll make sure.
All right.
We'll make sure we get the information out to folks afterwards. But there may be some individuals who want that information now. It sounds like we got at least one caller who wants that now.
Yeah, sure. So it's fccommunities.org. So that's F as in Frank, C as in cat, communities.org.
So fccommunities.org. Okay, can you unmute her again, Yelena?
Yes. Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we got you. Well, you have anything
Oh,
else?
okay. No, thank you, and thank you, Councilman Tate. Thank you.
Thank you. Yelena, who do we have next?
We have CPL Cox.
CP Corporal Cox, how are you, sir? Thanks for joining us.
How's it going, Councilman Tate and everyone else?
Doing well.
I just have a question. Seeing that we are the largest populated precinct in the city of Detroit, and we deal with a lot of squatters, will any of this housing be emergency housing for people we have to remove from these houses? None? Okay.
No,
thanks.
it will not. Yeah,
Okay.
emergency. This is not emergency or transitional shelter. This is permanent supportive housing. So folks that live at our property have, a standard apartment lease just like anybody else in the city.
Correct. But people we've run into have said they have a hard time finding housing, open housing. And we're left in a situation where we have to put them out immediately. They squatting in the house, they broke into the house, the homeowner wants the property back, and when we're sent there, all the paperwork is done. So it looks like I'll be looking to other resources to get those people taken care of, but thanks anyway.
Yeah, so we can talk.
I mean, I think we could.
Well.
Yeah, I think, we're not going to be able to find places for all of those folks, but Amy, I don't want to speak for you. Alternatives for Girls is one of the lead organizations that deals with homelessness, not just for their own clients, but in planning for the citywide issues. So in terms of being a resource that, could maybe share ideas about addressing these problems, I think this project can also fulfill those goals as well, even if we can't necessarily house the folks.
Amy, anything you want to add to that, or?
Sure, just that Alternatives to Girls is very active with the citywide collaboration of all the homeless service providers. We also have a crisis line and a crisis walk-in center, and we're happy to help in whatever way we can make referrals. I mean, AHE operates an emergency shelter ourselves. That's not going to be at this site in District 1, but we do operate one for girls and young women ages 15 to 21. But we're also connected to all of the homeless service providers, and we'll be in the neighborhood and we want to help. So we can just continue a conversation and help provide whatever resources exist in the city and help make warm referrals and help build partnerships as needed. So don't hesitate.
Yeah, we'll absolutely have someone from our team reach out as well. Yelena, who do we have next? Or is that the last caller?
Our last hand raised is Tommy again.
All right. Tommy, you are our last caller, then we're going to wrap up after that.
Okay, so my question is, with a large portion of D1 being in the Rouge watershed, what GSI accommodations are coming to this site?
Can you define GSI for me? I think I know what it is, but I don't want to mess that up.
Green stormwater infrastructure. And I know that a lot of new developments in the city that have a certain, I think, dollar threshold, like they have to provide some kind of green stormwater infrastructure.
Gotcha. Yeah, so this site is large enough that it does trigger the city's new stormwater ordinance. So this project will have to deal with kind of, it has to deal with all stormwater on site. In addition to that, so I talked a lot about the state funding source. Tyler has mentioned that, there's various things that contribute to a competitive scoring application. Mm-hmm. One of them is green building features. So they essentially require that we do some kind of green certification. There's 3 different pathways. You may be most familiar with LEED. So this project is going to be, I'm not sure if we're going to go through LEED certification or if we're going to go through Enterprise, but the minimum threshold is essentially the equivalent of LEED Silver. As part of that, we have to do enhanced, stormwater features on the property. So in addition to actually having a detention underneath the building, we also have some landscaping elements of bioswales that can help deal with that. And then also within the building, we have water conserving features. So all of that I think is going to help with that GSI impact that this building could otherwise have. I think, and I'd have to confirm this with the engineer, but right now it's obviously a vacant lot. I believe the ground stormwater ordinance would actually require the features that we would be bringing to the site to actually be better than what the site is currently able to handle, even though there isn't a building there.
That's awesome, Carl. Thank you.
All right. That is our last question that we're having from the hands raised. Yelena, we do want to do a quick lightning round because again, we want to respect everyone's time, but respect their time this evening for asking those questions. So we got three questions in the chat, Yelena?
Yes, and they were all from Ms. Pilsen Construction. One is, will this project create any revenue in District 1? That was the first one. The second,
Let's let them ask that question first, and then we'll go through the others.
okay.
Is this a revenue generating project for the district and for the city as a whole?
Yeah, so currently, because it's Detroit Land Bank owned, it's not on the tax rolls. So it currently pays nothing. Projects of this type, so affordable housing in the city of Detroit, pay a fee. I don't know if I have it in front of me, but basically the fee is calculated off of the rents that we collect on an annual basis, and then that is paid to the city annually. In addition to that, depending on, I think, many questions related to this childcare space, if it's a nonprofit childcare provider, it obviously won't be generating revenue, but if it doesn't for some reason, it would be paying property taxes. And then I would say this isn't revenue per se, but it is sort of an in-kind service. So this is obviously a really large lot. We'll be responsible, for maintaining it in perpetuity.
Yelena?
Second question, will it bring any potential jobs?
Yeah, let's talk about jobs, and especially jobs for D1 residents.
Yeah, so I think the majority of the job opportunities are really going to be through the construction of the project itself. And we've already talked a little bit about how there's numerous incentives and some demands that opportunity is shared broadly with the community. And that's not just kind of like an intention. I mean, it's something that the state and the city check in on monthly to make sure that we're hitting our targets. So there is a very sustained focus on making sure that is advertised and open to folks in the neighborhood. Beyond that, there are some permanent positions at the property. So there's going to be a full-time property manager on site. So sometimes that's somebody that comes from another, affordable housing development, or sometimes it's somebody that's just starting off in the field. So that could potentially be somebody that lives in District 1. There's also going to be a full-time maintenance person, so somebody that takes care of the building itself, when apartments, when things go wrong, and also the grounds. So that's another opportunity, I think, for a local hire. And then, Amy, I don't want to speak for you, but with the child care providers, I'm assuming some of those, might be new positions that AFG is hiring.
Oh, definitely. And I would just add that those who are living in this building will be doing shopping, locally.
And then, I think this is coming from somebody that does some contracting work in the neighborhood. Once the building's completed, folks don't live in these apartments forever. So when units turn over, our management company is going to be making connections with local companies to be able to, do painting, do small repairs and things like that over time. So once we're open, it's also another opportunity to build connections with the neighborhood, because that does tend to be a very local scene that we use to do improvements.
All right. Yelena, our last question.
Can you commit to buying locally grown approved produce?
Now? Oh, go ahead, Carl.
I guess, so we don't, it's not a shelter, so we're not responsible for feeding folks. All of the apartments, have their own kitchen. So I can't commit to that because, you know, we're not providing food to our tenants. But I think, you know, in addition to doing community gardens, and we have a number of projects where we do run programs like that, we're also interested in this idea of working with, you know, the local food sheds. So a couple of ideas that we've worked with is, you know, when we're in a more rural area, can we be a pickup location for community supported agriculture? Can we work with local food banks that, in addition to providing a drop-off space for our tenants, community members can also use that as a resource? And then something that's even more recent, I don't know if it's a program in the city of Detroit, but in Chicago we call them love fridges. So they're basically food drop-off places that are maintained by community members and local organizations, where, you know, basically anybody can come and when they need something, take it. I think Full Circle is increasingly interested in this idea that we can be you know, an important member of the community by helping to be a place where creative initiatives around hunger can take place.
Elaine, I think that's our last. Oh, Amy, you have one last thing you want to add?
I was just going to add that then we will be providing food in the daycare program, of course, and the AHE partners. I mean, we do buy produce at Easter Market. We partner a lot with Forgotten Harvest, and we'll apply those partnerships where it makes sense in this building. In fact, we work with some of the same vendors that are consistently active in the Rosedale Farmers Market.
Okay. Elaine, was that the last question? I think that was.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, we again want to thank everyone for joining us this evening for this presentation. As been mentioned several times, this is the very beginning. This is the top level view. We had a lot of questions, which is great, which means that Full Circle, as well as Alternative for Girls and HRD, know kind of like what you're going to be, I don't want to say up against, but the level of expectation from the community as we move forward in this particular project. Before we wrap up, we want to make sure that folks have information on our District 1 monthly meeting that we're going to host this upcoming Saturday at 10 a.m. We're going to have some very engaging speakers. We're going to have joining us the very first time together at a community meeting publicly. We're going to have both Mary Cavanaugh, Representative Mary Cavanaugh, as well as Representative Stephanie Young. It's going to be a great opportunity to hear what they have to offer, what they're going to be presenting as they move forward in their new positions, new roles as state legislators. Also going to have a gentleman who is the new director of the Office of Disability Affairs. He's going to be joining us as well, brand new to his position. Will provide information again on his direction that he plans to take that office, which just recently got off the ground itself. So a lot of big things going on. We got a couple other things that are happening, but tune in at 10 a.m. on our District 1 Facebook page. And we're also going to make sure that the Zoom is out there for public as well. And as always, starting this year, of course, we're going to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask questions as well. And so with that being said, we want to again thank you for joining us. Reggie, we want to put up that last slide up and thank our guests as well for joining us. Thank you for taking the time out this evening. We will be seeing you again, I'm sure, very, very soon. Everyone, have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.